Hello friends! During Vlogmas week 1, I actually got some blind date with a books at my local comic book store. They have a few full-length novels, but mostly are manga and comics, and I haven't opened them yet. And I thought it would be fun to open them, see what I got, and then maybe read the books for this vlog. It will really depend on what I get, and I do think I might be working on this vlog over the next few months, depending on what's in here and when I can insert them into my reading. So I'm opening them now so that I can start getting the audiobooks in for whatever's in here. So that being said, if I look vastly different in the next clip because I know I'm getting my hair cut sometime in the next few weeks, there may be a bit of a time jump from the time I open these books to the time I actually read these books, because I just don't even know what's in here. I don't know if it's going to be hard to get audios. I don't know the circumstances. So let's open them up. But if I look vastly different in the next clip, it's because some time has passed, because I do not really plan to start this until at least Vlogmas is over. We're currently on the 13th day of December, so Vlogmas is not over yet. Or is it the 14th? Anyway, Vlogmas is not over, so I don't even think I'll touch this and start reading these until Vlogmas is over, but I really wanted to open them and find out what's in them. So the first one is an adult sci-fi. The second one is an adult fantasy. Now I am going to hold these up so that you can put your guesses as to what's in them by the descriptors on the front covers. So I will hold them up. Let's start with the adult fantasy, or sorry, the adult sci-fi. And this is the description. Leave your guesses down in the comments and let's open it up. I'm giving you a second to put your guesses. You can also just pause the video too. This feels like a hardcover. Let's see what it is. Let's see. It's definitely a hardcover. What is this? I don't think I know what book this is. The Genesis of Misery by Neo Yang. Does anybody know what this is? I don't think I've ever heard of this book. Well, that's kind of exciting actually, to get a book that I don't know anything about. That rarely happens and is kind of the fun part of blind date with a book. Hold on. It's an old familiar story. A young person hears the voice of an angel saying they have been chosen as a warrior to lead their people to victory. But misery knows they are a fraud. That sounds good. Okay, I'm excited for this one. I'm excited to try this out. Let's grab the other one. The other one is an adult fantasy book, as I accidentally almost called this one. Let me hold it up for you to make your guesses. Obviously, the reason I picked this up was the words dark academia. That got my attention immediately because we all know I love a dark academia book. So pause it if you need a second to put your thoughts and your guesses. Let's see what's in here. This paper is very loud. I'm sorry. Oh, this is also a hardcover. Magic for Liars. I have heard of this book before. I have not read it, which is really exciting because I'm always nervous with blind date with a book that I will get books I already own because my TBR is quite large, but I own neither of these. This book is by Sarah Gailey and it says, "Everyone has a secret. What are you hiding?" Honestly, this sounds right up my street. I love a fantasy dark academia with a mystery vibe. I'm very excited to get into this. So I am going to go hunt down the audios. I know this one will have an audio. This one I'm not sure, but I'm gonna go see whether I can get the audios for these. And I will check back with you once I have those or once I finally start reading these books. So it has been about a month since I unboxed these blind date with a book books, and it is now time to start reading them. And I already have started with A Genesis of Misery. This book I knew nothing about when I picked it up, and I knew nothing about it when I unwrapped it. Since then, I've looked into it a little bit more, and this is a Joan of Arc retelling, which, I mean, a retelling, hello. We love to see it. But I will say, at this point, I've read the first part of this book, which took me up to page, hold on, let me check, 113, and I know what's going on, but I do feel a bit removed from the text. There's something about either the writing style or the world building that is keeping me kind of on the outside looking in. I feel like I'm missing bits. I don't have everything that I need to fully put the story together yet. Maybe I will get it. Sometimes in sci-fi, I do find that's the case, that we are kind of in a question mark until near the end. So maybe that's what's going on. I do know what's going on, but again, I feel just a little bit removed. In this book, we follow Misery, And they are considered the ninth Messiah in this world that we are currently in. And Misery's kind of always been told that that is what they are. And there's many reasons for that. Their mother had a vision when they were pregnant with them, and that has led them to this conclusion, as well as this leading religion of faithfuls that are in this world. So in this world, we have the faithfuls and we have the heretics. And there is a backstory somewhat. It's like 3 pages long. Again, I would like more information on how the faithfuls became the faithfuls and how the heretics became the heretics. And also the 8 previous messiahs. I know very little about that I would like to know. But anyway, I don't know all the details. And the faithfuls also believe that Misery is the 9th Messiah. Misery does not necessarily believe that to be the case. They think that there is potentially like some sort of something else going on, and that it's kind of made up by this ruling faction. Because not only are they the religious rulers, but the religious rulers have now melded into being the political system of this society as well. So they have a lot of power. And right now, Misery is not necessarily buying into what they're selling. And they have now taken Misery and basically captured them and put them in a basically prison right now to force Misery to do what they need them to do. So obviously Misery is our Joan of Arc character, and there's a lot of politics and religious propaganda going on in this book, not from the author, but for the story and the propaganda of this world system. And I'm interested to see how that plays out throughout the story. However, there is just something about the writing style that is keeping me from sinking into it. And there's one thing that really caught my attention. It was just one instance, but it really, really caught my attention of making me feel almost old reading this book, because instead of writing something out, they use the acronym. Like if you were texting someone, like a texting acronym. And hold on, I'm going to look it up. It was at the start of chapter 5. I know exactly where it was because I knew I wanted to tell you about it. So instead of writing out on the other hand, they put OTOH, like if you were texting someone. And I did not love that. Write it out. Write out the sentence. I feel like using shorthand like that, we're trying to cater to a much younger audience. And I know this is a YA book, although on the blind date with a book, it did say it was adult. This is definitely a YA book. But I just think even in a YA, I don't want to see that. Write out the words. It only happened that one time in 100 pages. It's not a common thing, but it did like kind of grate on me a little bit that we didn't write out the words. So at this point, I would say I'm interested in what this story is trying to do. I'm interested in the retelling. I would like a lot more information on the world, the political system, the religious system. I want to know more so that I can actually fall into the story. And hopefully I get that as I continue reading this. So there are 3 parts to this book. I think I'll just talk to you after each one, and we'll kind of have a discussion on how I'm feeling as we go along. The end of part 2. I am at the precipice of starting part 3, and I'm on page 276. And everything I said in the last update, I still feel like it stands quite a bit. There's something about either this writing style or the lack of full descriptions of things that we're encountering, or we're really just hitting so many things on the surface that it makes it really hard for me to fully picture what's happening in this book. But I did find some things interesting in part 2 of this book. In part 2, I finally found out what this thing on the cover was. This is like the spaceships that the fighters in this army and religion can like use. So that's what these are. That's what this is on the cover. So that was kind of good to like figure out what that was. Honestly, it really reminded me of the fighting system in Heavenbreaker, which I read late last year. And I will say, if I was going to pick which one of those I enjoyed more, I would pick that book. I actually had a really fun time with that book, and I'm not having fun with this. But again, there's something that makes it really hard to fully dive in. Also, I wish Misery would question some stuff some more. I feel like even when they don't necessarily believe what this religion is telling them and what these leaders are telling them, they still just kind of like fall in line. And I would like to see some more outward questioning. Maybe I'll get that in part 3. We'll see. I will say the chosen one trope is never really a favorite of mine. There might be a couple books that I've read that I did enjoy that, but overall, it's not something I tend to fully gravitate towards, and this is very much chosen one. Like, that is the main trope in this book. That's really my only thoughts at this time. I don't really have a lot of extra thoughts. So I'm going to finish out this book, and we'll see if part 3 helps me get the answers and more descriptions than I need, but I think it might be a writing style thing of not giving those super in-depth descriptions, and that's not going to change. But let's finish it out. Let's see how it ends. Let's see where my star rating comes out with this book, and then we're going to start the other one when we come back, because truly I'm very excited about this Dark Academia one we're going to read after this. But let's finish this one out first. I should be able to finish this, I would say today or tomorrow, because there's only like 30 pages left. Yeah, about that, 130, 140 pages. That's not going to take that long to get through. So I'm going to focus on this hopefully today, and then we'll dive into the Dark Academia one after that.
Who said thoughts only cost a penny? 'Cause if that's the case, baby, I'd have plenty. And I've been scrolling up 'cause my head's heavy.
So yesterday I ended up going to a book swap at a local tap room. We had a really great time. I'm really starting to get engaged in bookish events happening around my area and finding bookish friends that are like local. And I'm really enjoying kind of tapping in to my local book community. I did end up taking 4 books with me to unhaul, and I ended up coming home with 3. So I feel like that's not bad. The 3 I came home with, I figured I'd show you before I gave you a vlog update, and I ended up grabbing a thriller. Last week I did a mood reading vlog, which you would have already seen, and I read 2 thrillers during that time. And I actually had a good time reading thrillers, which I haven't read thrillers basically most of 2024. So maybe I'm re-entering my love of thrillers. So I did pick up one when it was there, and that is All the Missing Girls by Megan Miranda. I've read one Megan Miranda that I really liked last year for B&K, and one that was just okay. But I thought this was in pretty good quality. It was free. We'll throw it on the shelves and maybe get to it while I'm feeling like reading thrillers again. Then there was a book that everyone is talking about, and I read the first book in this series and loved it, read the second book in the series and hated it. So I wasn't really sure if I wanted to read the third, but everyone is telling me the third is just as good as the first and that I should read it. And since it was free at the book swap, I figured, what's the harm? So I ended up grabbing Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I really hope this lives up to Part of Your World, because that is the book that I absolutely loved in this series. And I really hope this is just as good. I'm hearing that it is, so I'm going to trust my friends, trust the Bookstagram, BookTube, Book Talk train, and try this book out. The last one I picked up I had never heard of before, and it was strictly a cover grab, and I did read the synopsis and it did sound interesting, and that was A Crane Among Wolves by June Hyur. Historical fantasy with somewhat of a romance was the vibe that I got from this based off the synopsis and also the Goodreads tags. It came out in 2024, but I really haven't heard anything about this, so if you have, let me know if it's good, because I don't know. But 4 books out, 3 books in, the shelves got a little bit smaller by 1 book. You know, we did the things. It's fine. Everything's fine. And I also finished A Genesis in Misery, and I'm so glad this book is done. Honestly, the whole time I was reading this book, I wasn't loving it. You know this, you watched it. But it got worse for me in part 3, mostly because I think by part 3, it expected me to care about these characters a lot more than I did, and about this world system a lot more than I did. But because everything is just so two-dimensional, it was impossible to care, at least from my perspective. I did not have any investment in any of these characters. So I will say earlier in this vlog, I did say this was YA, and there is content in the second half of this book that definitely made it adult, or at least new adult. However, those sexy scenes just did not work, because throughout the whole time, they are discussing military strategy, and it felt very odd to be having these really clinical discussions in the middle of a sexy time. The only other book that I have heard that is something similar to that happening is Jade City. I haven't read it, but I have heard of the sexy scene in Jade City and that it is very clinical, and that's how it felt in this. It was just a little weird. What I was really hoping from this book was that we would get more information on both sides, the faithfuls and the heretics, and we would have two kind of factions, and our main character kind of grappling with what is right, what is wrong, and questioning, and that is not what I got in this book, unfortunately. I felt like both sides, I really never understood or cared about the in-depth nature of each one, and everything just fell really flat. So because of all of that, I am going to give this 2 stars. So it's not really a win for our first blind date with a book, because obviously 2 stars is not ideal, but I do have higher hopes for this next one. Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey is dark academia. I also think it's a fantasy mystery blend, which I recently read Voyage of the Damned, and I really liked that blend of fantasy and mystery. So I'm hoping to like it in this book as well. This one is also shorter, so it's going to be a much faster read. So I'm going to dive into this today. I do have Patreon sprints tonight, so I may be able to get to the 50% point in order to update you again. We'll kind of see how the day goes, but I do have much higher hopes for this book going in, just because I know a little bit more about this where I had never heard of this one before. So yeah. So it is the next day, and I've made it to 50% of Magic for Liars. Actually, I think I'm at like 45%. I'm on chapter 13. And I am having such a great time with this book. I'm having such a great time. This is such a win. I'm not surprised that the magical dark academia book is a win, but it is. It is a win. This book, we start off at a magical school, in a magical library. We're meeting some of the magical staff. The books are talking. And then someone is found murdered. Actually split right in half. Magically, obviously. Then we cut to a private detective named Ivy. And Ivy is a PI, does not typically investigate murders, does more of like the cheating husband side of being a PI. When the headmaster of this organization shows up and hires Ivy to come to this magical school and discover who did this murder. The magical detectives have looked into it and have called it basically like an accident. They don't think there's been a murder, but everyone who knows this teacher who was murdered thinks there has been a murder and wants a second opinion. They're bringing in Ivy because magic is not really known to the public. Magic is somewhat secretive. And Ivy knows about magic because her twin sister Tabitha is magical and actually works at the school as a teacher. Ivy does not have magic herself, and we really do see Ivy kind of showing in the past how that did create a rift between her sister and her, because her sister went to a magical high school. She did not. Her sister had magic. She did not. And that did create some tension between the sisters, and it does mean they're not really close now as adults. So Ivy is coming into this school, and we're seeing Ivy trying to solve this murder, which is really interesting. We're seeing the different types of magic at this school, which is really interesting. We're seeing the secrets coming out. There is definitely quite a large investigation going on. And we're also seeing Ivy kind of see what it would have been like had she been magical and got to go to a magical school with her sister. One thing I noticed last night when I was reading this book was that it really made sense that I am loving this fantasy mystery subgenre, or this genre blend of fantasy mystery. I discovered that I really did like that with Voyage of the Damned, but really, I have been reading fantasy mystery blends for a very long time because Dark Academia, when it is a fantasy book, typically is a fantasy mystery. So technically, I have been loving that subgenre or genre blend for a really long time, and I just was thinking of it as Dark Academia. So it does make sense that that works for me, and that when it is Dark Academia, obviously I instantly gravitate toward it, but that love of that mystery inside a fantasy would spark my interest. I truly believe I am going to fly through the rest of this book today because I do not want to put it down. I'm really just sinking into the story, falling into the magic. I want to know who the killer was. I want to know all the details of the magical schools. I love when the books are talking. I would like to know more information about the talking books. There's truly so much that I'm excited to dive into with this book, and I will continue to do so today. So I have finished Magic for Liars, and I'm going to give this a 4-star. I really enjoyed this book, and I kept thinking I knew what was going on and kept trying to figure it out. And I was really along for the ride of this book, really along for the ride of this mystery and the commentary in this book. I really love seeing Ivy kind of struggling with what her life could have looked like if she was magic like her sister, and almost having like an identity crisis now that she's at this magical school. We also had a lot of talk in this book of what is it possible for magic to fix? What is it possible for magic to do? What are the limitations of magic, especially around medical things such as abortion, such as cancer? What are things that magic can and cannot do? And I felt that that was very fascinating to read during this book and to see kind of an in-depth look into the commentary based around magic. But also, there are obviously some things that you can pull out of the commentary that are applicable to a world without magic in which that we live. This was a really great Dark Academia book. If you love Dark Academia, you will love this. The atmospheric vibes of this book, there are moments, I mean, we have a teacher split down the middle at the beginning. Like, that's how she's murdered. The atmosphere of it, there's moments where you're kind of like, ew, this is kind of gross. But like the atmosphere, it was very atmospheric. The vibes were everything you'd want. And it was a really fast, enjoyable Dark Academia read. As a Dark Academia lover, I really did enjoy this book a lot, and it definitely makes me want to check out the author and see what else the author has written. However, I did notice that the author definitely writes many different genres. It's not always fantasy, mystery, Dark Academia. There seems to be some thrillers. There seems to be some horror. It doesn't shock me that the author does lean towards a horror vibe, because there are definitely some horrific elements to this book, especially when I'm talking about those gross things in the atmosphere of the book. They could lean to body horror. It's light, it's just light, but I could see that in other books that are horror books, the author could go down that road. It doesn't shock me. So if you've read another Sarah Gailey books, I know some of their books are very, very popular, and you think there's ones that I would like as someone who is not necessarily a horror reader but enjoyed this book, can you let me know kind of where I should continue on with this author? Because I don't really want this to be the only Sarah Gailey I read, because I did really enjoy the writing style of this book. But with that, I'm going to end this vlog here. I really did like trying out Blind Date with a Book books. Would you like to see me try Blind Date with a books from other places? I know some people sell them online, so it's definitely something that I could purchase down the road, or do another version of Blind Date with the Book some other way. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, leave a hand emoji, because obviously that's pretty much the only thing on this cover. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps my channel so much. I hope you have a great day. Bye, friends.